class, welcome to today's segment whereby we give examples on questions to expect in each part of IELTS speaking tests. So let us get right into it, and we shall begin with part 1 of the IELTS speaking test. As we said, part 1 is usually about personal questions and is in dialogue format, whereby the examiner asks you a question and you answer the examiner. So it's like you're conversing with the examiner. So I will give examples of personal questions that you may encounter in part 1. And in part 1, guys, it's very simple. As I said, many students consider part 1 to be the easier part of the speaking module. This is because the examiner is literally just asking about yourself. So it's easy for you to have ideas, to give examples, to give information about yourself. Yeah, basically you're just talking about yourself. So some of the questions might include, where do you live? That is one question. Tell me about your hometown. That is also another question. Tell me about your favorite food. Okay, that's another question. What chores do you do at home? What chores do you like and what chores don't you like? Why don't you like those chores, or why do you like that kind of chore? Okay. What are your hobbies? What do you do for fun? Does your hometown have beautiful scenery? Do you work or study? For example, you say you study. They ask you, where do you study? Or if you say you work, they ask you, where do you work? If you say you work and study, they ask you, where do you work and where do you study? What is your field of work? What is your field of study? Tell me more about your hometown. Do you think it is important to laugh together? Where do you hang out with your friends? Guys, part 1 is just about personal questions. As I said earlier, remember, do not give one-word answers. And during our live classes, what we are going to do is we are going to be I'm going to ask you a question and you answer it just the same way you'd answer it in an examination. You get what I mean? As I said earlier, and I'll repeat, once you are asked a question, you answer that question and you give more information about your answer. You give more information either by talking about the past, the future, by giving an example, or by giving a purpose. For example, this is an example of a question you've been asked. Where do you live? An examiner has asked you, where do you live? In my case, I live in Athi River. So I will not say I live in Athi River or Athi River. No, because that is a vague answer. The examiner does not know if Athi River is a basement, does not know if Athi River is a type of an animal, does not know if Athi River is like a school. What is Athi River? In this case, you assume that the examiner does not know what you are talking about. Even if you've mentioned a popular place, please explain more about it. So in my case, I'd either choose to say, I live in Athi River. Athi River is located about 60 kilometers from the Nairobi capital center. It's a very good town. People are very friendly and welcoming, and the scenery is also very beautiful, and I'd encourage everybody to take a visit to Athi River once in a while. Alternatively, I'd say I live in Athi River. I have lived here since 2016 when I moved here with my parents from a previous town I was living in. So far, my experience has been really good, and I see myself living in Athi River for a couple more years, or till the end of this year. You get what I mean? You can also say, I live in the river. I live with my parents and my brother and my maybe house manager. And my neighbors here are very good, and that is why I have been encouraged to stay in the river for the last 5 years. You see, I'm explaining more about my answer. It doesn't have to be like, the explanation doesn't have to have a specific formula. Like, you can talk about the river in any way you want. You can also say, I live in the river. It's an urban town. It borders Kitengela town and Mlolongo town. And recently an expressway has been built which has enabled residents like I to travel from Nairobi CBD to the river faster. Like, your answer or your explanation doesn't have to have a specific structure. You can literally talk about anything. For example, the examiner has asked you, what is your favorite hobby? You see, my favorite hobby is swimming. I love swimming because it's also a form of exercise as much as it's a leisure activity. It has enabled me to substitute going to the gym, as while I'm swimming, I'm also able to do some exercise. You can say I love swimming. My favorite hobby is swimming. I usually go for swimming with my friends every weekend at a place called Interleisure in Kitengela town. And yeah, I enjoy it very much. You can also say I love swimming. I began swimming at age 8 when I went for practice lessons, and since then I have become a great swimmer. You give an explanation. No one-word answers. You give an explanation to give the examiner an idea about your answer. So you explain it. You explain it with either 2 to 3 statements at most. Yeah. You don't give a long explanation, but like 2 statements. Yeah. But we are going to go into this in detail in our live classes. Okay. So part 1, as I said, lasts for about maybe 5 minutes. Yeah. It's not a lot of questions. The examiner can ask you 4 to 5 questions depending on how you answer your questions. And as I said, it's important to say the truth because the examiner asks you the next question in line with your previous answer. For example, if the examiner asks you what is your favorite food, you say my favorite food is chicken. My favorite food is chicken. I loved chicken because my mom prepares it very well and I've enjoyed it since childhood. The examiner probably might ask you, apart from chicken, what else does your mom prepare for you that you enjoy? You get what I mean? You get what I mean? Like, the examiner has just picked a question from your answer, but it's still a personal question. I hope you've gotten my whole point. Or for example, the examiner has asked you, where do you study? You say, I study at Kenyatta University. I've been studying there since 2017 and at the moment I'm in my final year. I am graduating in 2024 or 2024. Yes. So the examiner might ask you, so what are your plans after you graduate in 2024? You see what I mean? So it's very important to say the truth because, for example, if you're not graduating in 2024, then you say you're going to stumble because you have to be thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not graduating. So it will take you a while before you answer because you are lying. Yeah. And the examiner is going to assume, they won't know you are lying, but they're going to assume you're not able to communicate your answers well. Okay. And always remember, the examiner is just trying to know if you're able to communicate. They're not trying to know your social status. They're not trying to know how you live at home. They're just trying to know if you're able to communicate. So no need to lie, or maybe to be too fancy, or to dump yourself down. Just be yourself, guys. Just be yourself, and I guarantee you nothing will be hard. Okay, let's move to part 2 and talk about questions that you might expect in part 2. As you remember, guys, I said part 2 is a monologue whereby you're given a topic and you're given 1 minute to talk about, to note down the ideas you're going to talk about, and then you're given 2 minutes to talk about that topic. And it's a monologue here. The examiner or the interviewer is not asking you questions. You're just given that topic, and then you're supposed to talk about it for 2 minutes straight with no interruption. Okay, and the 1 minute you're given to prepare yourself, please use it very wisely. Okay, let me talk about part 2 for a bit. Ensure your monologue is at least 1.5 minutes. Guys, sometimes I tell you, 2 minutes is not as little time as it might sound. Guys, for me, actually, in my actual exam, I underestimated 2 minutes, and guys, by the first minute, my points were done. Guys, it's not even a joke. Those were the longest 2 minutes of my life. Guys, I was just like, oh my god, my points are done. What do I do? And then the remaining 1 minute, it felt like an eternity. I felt like 1 hour. And the examiner is staring at me, and I'm staring at her. I'm fumbling my words. I'm trying to think of an idea to talk about. And I think part 2 was my undoing in the speaking module. Okay. Ensure your monologue is at least 1.5 minutes. So guys, as I said, you're given 2 minutes to talk about that topic, but it's not a must you finish those 2 minutes. But the minimum should be 1.5 minutes. So always ensure your monologue is 1.5 minutes. And guys, if you run out of points, do not panic. Just tell the examiner, I have finished talking about my topic, and that is all. And then the examiner is going to move on to part 3. But for me, because I hadn't thought ahead and thought, what if I run out of points? I just stared at the examiner. And you know, the minute you stare, then the examiner will assume that you do not know how to communicate, that you are done with speaking about a certain topic. You get what I mean? The examiner is not trying to know if you have many points. They're just trying to know if you're able to communicate. So if you run out of points before 2 minutes is over, just tell the examiner, I have finished talking about my topic, and that is all I had to talk, or that is all I have to talk about this topic. And that is all. The examiner will know that you are able to communicate when maybe you are done with speaking about a certain topic. Because, for example, you are telling a speech to an audience. What do you do when you run out of points? Or what do you do once you finish your speech? So you just inform them that my speech is done. That is all. But in my case, I panicked. Guys, everybody is human. I panicked. And instead of just saying I am done or my points are done, I began fumbling. Guys, I tell you, do not underestimate the speaking test. Do not underestimate it, because you assume it's easier. And I think for me, I got a little bit comfortable because my part 1, I felt I had done well. It was easier for me. So I was just like, you know what? I got this. But, I got out of that exam room. I wanted to cry. I literally wanted to cry. Anyway, as I said, you bring a pen, and you are also presented with a rough paper, and you should also bring your ID and mask for identification. So guys, as I said, for part 2, you are given the question paper. The question paper has the topic you're supposed to talk about, and also the question paper has guidelines in regards to your topic. So, for example, your topic is about forests. They're going to give you guidelines on what to talk about forests. Do you talk about deforestation? Do you talk about types of forests? Do you talk about type of trees in forests? This is just an example, guys. Yeah. So, the time, for example, if you're done with part 1, the examiner is going to tell you we are done with part 2 and now we are proceeding to we are done with part 1 and now we are proceeding to part 2. So that is when you're going to know you're in part 2. So after you've been presented with the question paper and the rough paper, and also you're presented with a pen, you're given 1 minute to think about what you're going to talk about, to think about how you're going to phrase your topic, your monologue. You're given exactly 1 minute. So use this 1 minute to get an idea of what you're going to talk about. Prepare the structure of your topic. Don't use time for different ideas. Write keywords quickly and remember you get bullet points to guide you. On your paper, write a roadmap. So guys, this 1 minute, for example, you've seen a certain topic, you should write that topic down. And then after that, talk about the things you're going to talk about in relation to this topic. And also write them down in order. I am going to begin with this, this. Okay, when I give you the examples, it will be easier to understand. And also use the guidelines given by in the question paper to know what you're going to talk about. Do not use this 1 minute to start thinking of really crazy ideas, because 1 minute is a really short time. So use the guidelines given to guide on what you're going to talk about. NB, information should be straight to the point, not introductory. So guys, in part 2, as I said, avoid talking like it's a story. Just go straight to the point. For example, if you have been told, talk about your university. This is just an example. Do not now begin talking about when the university was built, who was the first person to join that university. Remember, these 2 minutes should be conclusive. Like you should have an opening statement, like body statements, closing statements. Like you should just talk about information that is conclusive, that you can easily finish. Okay. Examples of questions to expect in part 2. Describe a person you think is intelligent. Guys, so let me give you an example of what I mean by do not tell a story, go straight to the point. For example, if a person you think is intelligent is your maybe parent or maybe your father, do not start saying my father was born, the most intelligent person is my father. He was born in 1996. He schooled in a primary school called, he went to secondary school called, he went to, by the time the 2 minutes mark is over, the examiner is not even going to know why you think your father is intelligent, because it's like you began telling a story. In this case, you can say something like, talk about him, what he does, and what makes him intelligent. For example, my father is a retired military man. At the moment, my father is a retired military. You can start. The person I think is intelligent is my father. My father is a retired military man, and at the moment, he works as a school principal at a school called XYZ. I think he's very intelligent because he always finds solutions to things very quickly, and in addition to that, he is very academically gifted. I say he's academically gifted because he's really performed well throughout his school. He scored blah. Like straight to the point. Straight, you go back to answering why you think this person is intelligent. You get what I mean? Okay. Another question you can expect in part 2, describe a picture, stroke a time, stroke an event that was very memorable. So in this case, you're going to describe where, if, for example, if it's a picture, where this picture was taken, with who, what time was it, why is it memorable, do you plan to take such a memorable picture again, what emotions does it bring out in you? Yeah, like straight to the point. For example, if it's an event that was memorable, you can say why this event, where this event was, when this event took place, who was in this event, what does this event commemorate, does this event have an anniversary? Get what I mean? Another question you can expect in part 2 is a question such as, describe your most challenging moment in life. That's one question. Another question you can expect is something like, can you talk about your best friend? Talk about your university. Talk about your parents. You get where I'm getting with this? Like, you're just given a topic, you're presented with a topic, and you are supposed to talk about it for 2 minutes. Yes. Especially in part 2, always record your practice. Take note of the time you use, if it's up to par, if it is like 2 minutes exact, if it's 1 minute, if it's 1.5. Also take note if you are in context. Is what you're talking about in context? Because sometimes, guys, you can realize that you've run out of points, and then you start filling up the remaining time with things that are out of context. So please ensure that you're within context. So during the recording, you're going to take note if your answer is in context, if you are answering in the required amount of time, how are you connecting your points with each other? Do you keep on stuttering while you're talking? Yeah. Make use of synonyms, adverbs, and connectors. Ensure you have structure in your speaking. Do you use tenses, etc.? Guys, these synonyms, adverbs, connectors will be separately discussed in line with how to spice up your speaking during the IELTS speaking test. So don't worry about that. So guys, I hope you fully understood part 2. It's just you're given a topic and you're supposed to describe that topic or talk about that topic. Okay. Let's move on to part 3. So part 2 lasts for 3 minutes. 2 minutes for talking, 1 minute for preparing. So let's move to part 3. Part 3 lasts for about 5 minutes. It's in dialogue format, and you're supposed to talk about the general population. So part 3, guys, is just the same as part 1, whereby it is in dialogue format, meaning that the examiner asks you a question while you answer it, as opposed to part 2, whereby you are just given a topic and you talk about it throughout. So here the examiner is asking you and you're answering the examiner. But the only difference between part 1 and part 3 is that part 1, the examiner asks you personal questions, but in part 3, the examiner asks you questions about the general population. The questions will not be centered around you. Yes. So, an examples of questions you can expect in part 3 is, how has globalization affected the food industry? That's a question you can expect. How has photography changed in the recent years? What's the difference between analog cameras and digital cameras? That's also another question. How have cities changed much during the recent years? Do you think genetic engineering will be popular in the future? What is your take on AI on the world today? So guys, for most students, part 3 can be quite challenging because sometimes the examiner can ask you a question in regards to a topic you have no idea. For example, they ask you a topic in relation to artificial intelligence. And guys, you do not know anything about artificial intelligence. For example, you literally have no idea. In this case, guys, do not panic. This is because, as I have said once more, the speaking test does not test your knowledge. They're not trying to see if you're a smart person, if you know everything under the sun. They're just trying to know if you're able to communicate. Do you get what I mean? Are you able to communicate to the examiner and explain the examiner your thoughts? So, for example, they've asked you, what's your take on genetic engineering? And you're just like, oh my God, I do not know anything about genetic engineering. Don't panic. Just tell the examiner, well, it's quite unfortunate that this is quite my first time to hear about genetic engineering. I am not well conversant with that topic at the moment, but once I leave this room, I'll really make a point to know more about genetic engineering, because I suppose that it is an area that is futuristic for the future generations. You get what I mean? You've just told the examiner that you do not know about this topic. So you've communicated your thoughts. So the examiner is just trying to know if you're able to communicate. They don't want to know, even probably themselves, they do not know about genetic engineering, or maybe they just Googled about genetic engineering when they came to the test. You just tell them, I don't know the answer to this. But do not say, no, I don't know. No, I don't know. Guys, I say the trick in speaking is no one-word answers or no one statement. Do never give one statement, as in, like, no, I don't know. You don't know what? What do you mean by you don't know? So just say, I am not familiar with this topic. It's not a topic I have encountered in my recent research or in my schooling, but I'll make a point to research about it. So even while you're communicating to the examiner, you're also using complex sentences and you're explaining in good English that you don't know. Yeah. So because I guarantee you, in part 3, you are more likely to meet a question you don't know anything about. So be prepared on how you're going to answer such a question. This is just a test by the examiner to know if in the outside world, if you encounter somebody that asks you a question in English that you don't know about, are you going to be able to communicate to this person that you do not know this subject? If yes, then well and good. So I guarantee you will find a question you don't know about. So always be prepared on how you're going to answer that kind of question. And guys, part 3, it is very crucial to take at least 3 to 5 seconds to think about your answer, because mostly part 3 is about topics that you don't normally encounter. So you might need some time to gather your thoughts, and don't panic. Just give a simple answer. For example, if they've asked you, how has photography changed in the recent years? This is a question that the examiner has posed to you. You can say, well, I'd say photography has really taken a turn in the recent years. And I'd say it has taken a positive turn. This is because in the recent times, photography has gone more digital, whereby the general population can be able to take digital photos, as opposed to ancient times or earlier years, whereby photography was something so sophisticated and so complicated. This is because not everybody had an access to phones or cameras that in which you can take photos in. Something like that, like 2 to 3 statements. Okay. How have cities changed much during recent years? You can talk about how the cities have changed in terms of population. You can also talk about how cities have changed in terms of pollution. You can talk about how cities have changed in terms of infrastructure. Like you can literally choose any line to talk about. Okay guys, that is all in terms of some of the examples you ought to expect in each part of the speaking test. And guys, do not underestimate the speaking test. Please don't underestimate it, and practice makes perfect, especially practice for part 3, guys. So guys, in our live classes, we are going to tackle many examples in each part. Like, that will be my strategy and our strategy, in that by the time you get to the exam room, you have already encountered at least 3/4 of the questions the examiner is going to talk about. Especially in part 1 and part 2, guys, most IELTS questions, especially in the speaking test, are just recycled. So the more questions you deal with, the higher chances are that you're going to encounter the same question in your IELTS speaking tests. Okay guys, we've come to the end of our class, and see you in the next segment. Bye.